So when you're on YouTube, you're of course going to clash with other YouTubers and the way they sometimes put out videos and their interpretations. And reasonable people can have reasonable disagreements, but I gotta say, even within reasonable disagreements, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is just not plausible interpretation this person is putting out with Midsommar. So we're gonna try to go through Critical Drinker and his ranting and raving of Midsommar. Now, I should forewarn, I actually am somewhat sympathetic because I did find Midsommar disappointing. I didn't find it as great as other people, but I do respect Ari, and he is a very great director, and I am sympathetic to what he was trying to do with Midsommar, but I think it did have a huge amount of flaws, so I can't say it's a great film, but it's a solid piece of work. But Critical Drinker was apparently just angry that he didn't get what he wanted from the story, and that makes it a bad story, which is, of course, just a complete fallacy.
That makes the locals angry, and then he mysteriously disappears too, and still nobody seems to think this is odd. You know how all those old school slasher movies intentionally made their characters dumb and unlikable so you wouldn't feel bad when they got killed, but then it became a total cliche and people generally stopped doing it because it was obvious audience manipulation? Well, could someone please tell that to Ari Aster? He needs to hear it. Anyway, Chris.
So basically, he didn't get the cheap thrills that you get with a traditional slasher. Therefore, Midsommar is not scary. It's not really a horror movie. You made something really, really bad. Well, to concede the obvious, yes, for a horror movie, this is pretty weird and unusual. But I don't think there was much deception. Ari Aster and the whole production company really gave you a lot of clues, as well as in the trailers. This isn't that kind of horror movie. This is much more psychological horror. It would be wrong to say this is apolitical. It's not. It is very much an allegory about fascism, and it does touch upon white supremacy and things like that, but it does so in a very subtle way. I think that's also something Critical Drinker didn't like. If this cult was really, really evil, he should have made it very obvious they were evil, and the kids should have fought against them and triumphed at the end. Okay, maybe that would have been a better story. However, that's not this story. He didn't want to do that kind of story. He wanted to do his story. And you have to respect an artist to a certain degree when they do their story and try to do it their way. What's really shocking is, I'm not joking, Critical Drinker also praised The Northman.
The Northmen remind me that cinema can and should be an art form made by people with actual artistic visions instead of a fucking conveyor belt producing forgettable, formulaic content designed purely to make a return on investment. It's a film that kept me gripped and intrigued and left me with a lot to think about once it was over, and if you're in the mood for something a bit different and more challenging than the usual shite, then well, I recommend you give it a go. Anyway.
The Northman. And he didn't find that slow at all. He liked most of the story. He had very few criticisms. And you think to yourself, wait, that's the same thing. It's even put out by the same production company. And you're like, what is going on here? Like, what is your problem? And it seems like he's really hostile to the alleged politics in Midsommar, and that's his real problem.
Whole competition and walks in on Christian having sex, and she screams like she just saw him getting murdered or something. Then she turns into a flower pot, and the village elders explain that a sacrifice is needed to bring their midsummer festival to an end. Danny can choose to sacrifice Christian or one of the villagers, and they have a long, loving look at each other, and of course she realizes he was coerced into cheating on her under the influence, and he totally wasn't responsible for his own actions, and he's generally a decent man, and so she forgives him. Nah, I'm just kidding. Christian has to pay for what he didn't do, so they put him inside a bear. Wait, what the fuck? And then they dump him in a not wicker man, and he burns to death in horrifying agony, and Danny smiles because she's empowered or liberated now or something. And that's it. That's the fucking.
So basically, beautiful white Christian man dies. Danny, the feminist, lives. Well, we all know what they're trying to say. The women are beautiful and good. The white men are bad. All the men have to die. And Ari Aster is a radical feminist, communist, woke, diversity guy. And you're like, whatever you want to say about Midsommar, it's not that. It's not pro-feminist. In fact, I think it's actually very critical of feminism. And it's definitely not part of a, quote, woke Hollywood trend They explain, again, if you had saw the extended edition, why certain things are the way they are. I mean, you do ask yourself how Josh could have been that kind of naive, but they do explain it in the extended edition, and they make much more explicit. Yes, the cult has these kinds of Nazi roots, so that should have set off alarm bells. And in the extended edition, we do see the group being more skeptical, and some of them do debate, should we stay here or should we leave? But this is already a long film. They made a compromise. I think Ari Aster just expected the audience to be patient. Some of it was patient. They loved it. I'm sort of in between. I do appreciate what he was trying to do, but I wasn't really too scared. And sort of the twists, I kind of knew what was going to happen. But still, it was done with a lot of care and craft. And certainly it's not this crude political message. I don't think he realizes Danny's a victim. The whole point is they're manipulating everyone. They're manipulating the groups outside the Harga. They're manipulating groups inside the Harga. Even people inside the Harga believe these weird fascist rituals. But we know enough to say, wait, this doesn't add up. These rituals don't make any sense. That's the whole point. It's all a lie. It's a big lie. And the whole thing is the film is trying to challenge you. Do you really believe this stuff? Any of this stuff? And apparently he did. Critical Drinker actually took it seriously. It's like, no, it's a joke. Granted, it's a really weird joke. It's a very cruel joke, but it's a joke. They're playing you. The whole point here is how this psychological fascism can attract even ordinary rational people. And even for a few moments, they're genuinely tricked. And yeah, that's how they kill you. I mean, we even get some final scenes which are very not ambiguous at all, where even people in the Harga are being put to death violently. They were given this promise of a painless death. That's not what we see. So all I can say is you weren't patient. You wanted a preconceived idea of what you think a horror film should be, and you're imputing to Ari Aster all these political motives that are not in the film. This is a different kind of film. It asks you to be more patient and to think through what is going on. And with the Northman, he's willing to, apparently because it had the right political message. Oh, it's a beautiful white man. He's being very violent. He's attacking things. He's killing things. Right. But here, yeah, the white people die. A black person also dies. Is it a racist film? What are you, an idiot? It's a piece of art. It's a piece of fiction. It's ask you to be mature in examining it. You can still not like it, but you want to at least be careful with how you analyze it. But apparently that's too much for some YouTubers nowadays. So Midsommar for me is uneven, but I do think it's worth checking out.